Thank you, Brian, for the comprehensive sharing on the Indonesian overall tax and regulatory requirements. And once again, thank you, Dashun Foundation, having us to share today, and and also making new friends here, everyone physically. And may I introduce myself, Emily? I'm actually a tax partner in Hong Kong, which I have advised quite a number of my clients for their relocation or expansion in the ASEAN countries. And actually, I am a regular speaker for other organizations in this particular topic, expansion and relocation for the in the ASEAN countries. So in the next 10 minutes, what I will going to share is how we can make use of Hong Kong as the platform, okay, to invest into Indonesia. Because actually this is a very common and popular and typical question that my clients would ask me when they consider how they should plan when they go into the Indonesian market. So here we just show that a very simple illustrative example, and to answer the typical question that my client asked me. Fortunately or unfortunately, there is no single answer to address this question. Okay, there are different ways or methods to invest into the Indonesia. Okay, actually in the diagram, it's just for the sake of simplicity. Okay, I just show a Hong Kong parent company, but like Brian just mentioned, we actually need a local partner in Indonesia. Okay, under certain scenario, for example, to hold a PT, limited liability company in Indonesia. I just show one single Hong Kong parent company here for the sake of simplicity, okay, for our discussion. Okay, like I said, there is no single answer to consider what should be the best way or the best investment structures. Okay, as shown, there are different ways, like whether we can only just use one single Indonesian company, or to house different projects, or alternatively, can we use a different separate Indonesian company to hold different projects? Okay, and of course, each of the options, okay, would have pros and cons. Okay, we have to consider different factors. Say, for example, the nature and the size of the projects, and obviously locations of the projects. Whether we can make use of the different incentives or preferential zones that Brian has just shared in the earlier section, like the free trade zone or the special industrial zones, whether we can make use of the fiscal policies or tax incentives in these specific industrial zones for having different Indonesian companies. This is very important questions that we have to think about before consider whether we can set up one or different Indonesian companies. And obviously having different Indonesian companies would of course increase the compliance requirements, i.e. the compliance cost in Indonesia. Okay, say for example, in terms of the tax reporting, in terms of the transfer pricing, whether we need to consider the different pricing structures or the intercompany transactions or arrangements, all these would have to think about if we are going to have different Indonesian companies. Okay, but okay, there are still pros. Okay, having different Indonesian companies. Say for example, if we are having people going to Indonesia to monitor or look after the different projects, okay, what we will need to think about it's from a permanent establishment perspectives. Okay, maybe some of you would find what is permanent establishment. Actually in the tax world, okay, if we are sending people from home country, say for example from Hong Kong to Indonesia, okay, it may create a potential tax risk that this Hong Kong company would create a permanent establishment in Indonesia, which means that this Hong Kong company may potentially subject to Indonesian income tax. Okay, this is on top of the income tax that the local Indonesian companies, which obviously they have to pay. So that's why having different Indonesian companies sometimes, okay, may be a way to, protect, or, it's somehow a way to mitigate such potential permanent establishment risk, okay? Of course, this is not a golden rule, not an advice saying that, while we are possible to have different companies locally, then we can escape or avoid this potential permanent establishment risk. But, okay, this is one of the considerations that we have to think about if we are going to think about setting up a structure to hold the local projects in Indonesia. Okay. In addition, another angle we have to think about is when we consider a third-party investor, okay, on top of the original structure that we need to have a local partner in Indonesia when we set up in the first place, if in the middle of the projects, if we would like to invite a new or more investors to jointly develop a land site or jointly to do the construction projects, having different types of structures would create some kind of flexibility for us. Say, for example, if we are having housing different projects under different companies, okay, we can obviously allow us to have more flexibility to invite different partners to join different projects. Okay, this is some considerations that we have to think about if we are thinking of the options to set up different structures. Moving to the next slide. Well, because of the One Belt, One Road initiative, obviously there are many Chinese companies. They're also, consider how to make use of Hong Kong, okay, to invest into the Indonesia, okay. And then some of my clients would ask me, okay, how about direct investment by a Chinese company? They just go into Indonesia without having a Hong Kong platform, okay? Yes or no? Okay, obviously, commercially, it's doable, okay? But from a tax guy like us, okay, what we will need to consider is what is the difference, okay? Or is there any benefits of having a Hong Kong intermediary company in between, okay? So we basically set out a table in the slide. You can see that what we're trying to compare is from a withholding tax perspective, okay? Because under different treaties, okay, there are different treaty rates. Taking Hong Kong and China as a, just for the sake of comparison between the withholding tax rates, you can see that the rates under the Hong Kong and Indonesia tax treaty, the rate is a little bit more beneficial. Say, for example, for the dividend withholding, okay, it talks about like 5%, whereas under the China-Indo tax treaty, it's talking about 10%, okay? So you can see that having a Hong Kong company in between, okay, it can create a tax benefit. And of course, Brian may try to stop me. Hey, Emily, having a tax, a reduced treaty rate in Indonesia, Brian just mentioned that there could be difficulties and challenges, okay? This is something that we have to bear in mind, okay? Even though having a treaty country to hold an Indonesian company would create tax benefits from a withholding tax angle. But locally, if we're trying to apply for the treaty rates, okay, we have to come across the hurdles and make sure that we have a good discussion with Brian if we're going to seek for the reduced treaty rates. And moving to the next.
Can I just add something briefly?
Sure.
I think it's worth mentioning here that out of all of Indonesia's double tax treaties, the Hong Kong treaty is, I'd say, one of the two best globally. So Hong Kong is an excellent jurisdiction to invest into Indonesia from, but you do have to take into account the substance requirements to access that treaty.
Right. Thank you, Brian. That is a wonderful news for our audience. Okay, Hong Kong is one of the best treaty with Indonesia. Okay, so this slide just share with you the benefits of having a tax treaties. So I won't go into details. It's sort of like providing some protection when we're having tax dispute and help us to reduce tax costs, etc. So I won't go through in details. Okay, having tax policies, of course, is very important and attractive to companies. Okay, but having local government support, it's also a very important consideration to allow the companies to move or expand into other country. So moving to the next slide, I would like to share with you actually Hong Kong government, okay, it's offering quite a number of attractive funding scheme, okay, allowing Hong Kong company to obtain additional funding from the government to expand into the emerging markets, including Indonesia. Okay, so particularly on the right-hand side, you can see that the BUD funding. Okay, it's one of the very popular fundings offered by the government because if you are able to fulfill the conditions and submit the application to the Secretariat, which is Hong Kong Productivity Council. Okay, actually there is a matching fund of 1-to-1, meaning that you spend $1 million. Okay, you can get $1 million from the Hong Kong government, so that you can have extra fund to support your expansion into the Indonesian market. And good news is originally the cumulative funding ceiling is only up to 4 million, okay? But in the latest budget speech by our financial secretary, it's already announced that the ceiling it's increased up to 6 million, okay? So you can see that the government is actually offering a lot of fiscal measures and incentives for our Hong Kong companies to go into these emerging markets. Next, please. So this is just a snapshot as to what is meant by BUD, okay? By the name itself, it's branding, upgrading, and domestic sales. Then you would then ask me whether construction industry is covered by this BUD scheme, okay? The answer is first, this BUD scheme, there is no limitation in terms of the industry, okay? All industries, as long as you fall into the in-scope activities, you are qualified. You are able to submit the application, okay? So long as you are not the listed company itself, okay? All the subsidiaries within a listed group, you can still launch the application, okay? And then we do understand that construction company also apply for this BUD funding. So please look into this and see how this funding can help you guys to have extra funding to expand into Indonesia. Okay, next please. And then on top of the government funding, I think you guys hear a lot this term RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreements. Right now, Hong Kong is not a member within this partnership, okay, but China is. And the Hong Kong government already announced in many public speeches that they are very keen to enter into this partnership. So I guess if Hong Kong is able to enter into this RCEP agreement, okay, this would create extra, benefits or factors for domestic companies to look into different markets, because under the RCEP, RCEP, okay, there are a lot of good things, like on the right-hand side we summarize like duty elimination, duty refunds, and also, there are clear rules of origin and certification of origin, etc. So all these would be very important, measures or factors for most businesses. Next, please. Okay, in the interest of time, I guess everybody it's well aware of the Hong Kong competitive tax regime. Okay, unlike Brian, I just got one page. Okay, to summarize the Hong Kong competitive tax regime. Okay, again. I won't go into details, but in brief, there is no sales tax, VAT, no capital gain tax, etc. Okay, and the income tax rate in Hong Kong is just talking about 16.5. Okay. Actually, this is the profits tax, meaning that only the net profit, taxable profit, will be subject to these 16.5%. And there are other tax incentives in Hong Kong, say R&D, research and development, and technology-related, super deduction, etc. So if our construction company or related companies having research and R&D activities involved, there could be other tax incentives. Okay, next please. Okay. So just to wrap up for our section, okay, to echo with our topic, are you ready for business expansion in Indonesia? Okay, as a closing remarks, I would like to give out this word, readiness, okay, for you guys to as the takeaway. So when we think about whether you're ready or not, okay, we have to look into whether your business structure, your operating models, and you have to think about your financing arrangements, etc., so that you can make good use of the best investment structures or financing model, as well as the fact that there are different types of government fiscal measures and tax incentives. So we have to be, stay close to the government policies and stay tuned, stay curious for the different updates in Indonesian markets as well as the Hong Kong market. So that's, summarize our section. So I hope everyone right now would have a clearer picture as to the local Indonesian tax and regulatory requirement, as well as the typical structures that we can think about when we, as a Hong Kong company or Chinese company, go into the Indonesian market. So over to you, Lawrence.